In the recording. Hello, this is David Lee of Prevent Connect. Welcome to today's web conference, We Govern. How do we go from imagining a world without violence to building it? Welcome today to join us for today's web conference with Resonance Network and Prevent Connect. We're so glad to have all of you able to join us today. I am here, just want to highlight, we've done a lot of work with Resonance Network. I'm joined by the co-director of Resonance Network, Alexis Flanagan. Alexis, we've had some great web conferences. I'm not going to say all the names of them because there's so many of them, but we've really been able to tell, these series have been really looking at what does it mean to imagine a world without violence, and think about the storytelling methods that we can do. And then we've also talked about planting the seeds to build community. And at the National Sexual Assault Conference, we really had a powerful session on reimagining the world without sexual violence. I think those set, Alexis, an incredible foundation for what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, David, I'm so happy to be ending this series where we are right now. You know, when we started out inviting the Prevent Connect audience with us, in the process of shaping a worldview. What's the emerging world that we want to live in, and what does it mean for us to collectively dare to hope, to dream, to speak those dreams out into the world through our stories, through our visions. And through that work, we have come to a place where more and more folks have joined the network, and in their own networks and own spaces are saying, now what do we do? Like, let's build it, let's make it, and let's make it a reality right now. And we are here today with 3 participants in the network who are sharing what that looks like through an initiative that we have begun that takes that big, bold vision of a world without violence, a world where everyone gets to thrive and the earth gets to thrive herself, and begins to root us in some agreements then about how should we be together. So we're just so happy to be here to be able to jump into that conversation with this audience.
Great. And I saw that Tori put the links to all of these web conferences in the chat. So please, we have recordings of all of those available for you. Today, what we're going to try to accomplish is that by the end of today, everyone should be able to describe the principles of We Govern, be able to identify concrete practices to integrate into our world-building efforts, and to be able to share examples and stories of collective governance already being undertaken. And so I'm really excited for these opportunities to be able to have these. So Alexis, let's start with our audience. I'd love to see from our audience, what is your vision of a world without violence? Go ahead and write in the text chat. What is your vision for a world without violence? And so we'd love to just hear from our audience and so go ahead and write that into the text chat, and we are going to be able to see. And I know there's almost 300 of us here, so this is going to fly by quickly, I can tell. So I've got a world where every child and family has quality education, safe to walk everywhere, where people can live their best life, no more abuse in childhood, fair and just mediation, healthy, thriving agents, communities, peace, one which people are given teachings to be in conflict respectfully from an early age, land stewardship by indigenous people, no more prisons, land back, equity and opportunities, reliance on each other, freedom from fear. Families will be able to unite, opportunity to fulfill one's potential without threat of war, poverty, or starvation, a world where everyone's value is the same, connection to the past and future generations, no police, no juvenile incarceration, no prisons. I'm noticing some themes here, Alexis. Services for male survivors of domestic violence, peaceful living, security, no more trauma and treatment, healing from colonialization, health insurance for all, free up our energy to do so much more. So Alexis, I'm seeing some really common themes of both what we don't want and what we do want in our vision for a world without violence.
I do, and I'm excited. I feel hopeful, especially about that releasing energy, the energy that we have focusing on surviving these harmful systems right now, being invested in our thriving. Like that is really, really exciting to me.
Yeah, investing in community and health, long lasting and healthy relationships. Recognize and begin to heal the historical trauma our country has from colonialization and white supremacy, res- reproductive justice, village builders.
Understanding humanity. I saw community self-governance.
Well, thank you. So please keep on going. And we love hearing and seeing the vision that the 295 of us here are sharing. And it's really, recognizing that we're talking about more rights and protection for domestic violence survivors, along with clean and free water, and that peace and love are experienced by all. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing with us. So let's talk about, Alexis, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the We Govern principles and the work that Resonance Never is doing as you've introduced this really exciting new initiative on We Govern.
Yes, thank you, David. I'd like to introduce that and also to connect it to this the beautiful components of this collective vision that are coming in. You know, people may be saying some very different things, and in a lot of ways, we're saying the same thing, and it's acknowledging that that shaping this world takes all of us. It's a collective effort, and that like more rights for survivors of domestic violence, more protection for survivors of domestic violence is connected to having clean and free water. And so We Govern is an effort that built out of that grew out of the collaborative world building that we have been doing, the visioning that we have been doing together and with this audience of the world that we hope to be creating with each other. The inspiration comes from the same place that the inspiration that brings people together on this call that said, who read the invitation and said, yes, this is where I want to be. And that's a deep and abiding belief that a new worldview, a better way, and a different way of us living and being together is not only possible, it's within our reach, and that we're the people to bring it about. And so, in this series so far, as we have explored what the world is that we want and how we want it to look and sound and feel and taste, how we want to be able to move, how we want to be able to use our energy. Resonance Network, along with the folks that we have been collaborating with, offer to the world We Govern as a set of governance principles that'll help us build this world and really begin to take on this idea that Grace Lee Boggs talks about of revolution as evolution, to be able to take that on together. And so we've asked the question, ultimately, we want to respond to the question, what governance principles would need to be true in order to bring that worldview that we have been co-creating into being and to sustain it? It's an affirmation also that governance isn't outside of us. Governance isn't about the people that we elect to office. Governance isn't about necessarily holding official elected positions or appointed positions, but that we all have a role of governance. It's an affirmation that it begins with us. It begins with the choices that we make every day to engage with ourselves, to engage with each other, to engage with our communities and our collective systems. And these agreements are that we offer are a starting place. They're a starting place for a new kind of governance where everyone participates first and foremost, and when everyone gets to thrive. And David, you can just flip through the slides. You can, however it feels, just natural. There we go, to just keep going. And so when we talk about governance, we're defining governance as a process by which people determine the norms and the rules that guide people's everyday life and behavior, for including how do we choose to live together. And when I look at these, the words that jump out to me the most, David, are we choose, right? So often we are living together because of decisions that have been made about us without us, right? And so for us, governance is about us exercising our agency to choose how are we living together? How are we going to recognize and uphold each other's well-being and freedom? How are we going to choose to use our resources together to build systems and structures that reflect our shared values? And how do we care for the land? How do we reconnect to our sacred responsibility to care for the land and to care for each other's well-being? And so if you visit the website wegovern.org, you will see all of the principles that'll be shared on the slides as we begin to move through the conversation today. You know, also on the website at the top, there's links to a social media kit about the initiative, and at the bottom there's a link to some frequently asked questions about that. And I just want to lift up something that's written in those frequently asked questions, because it really embodies to me what we're talking about when we're talking about governance. And what it says is that whether we're deciding whether it's worth it to struggle with a kiddo to eat broccoli, whether we're facilitating a healing conversation among friends, or whether we're creating a spending plan for clean energy in our town, the act of making choices for our collective well-being is governance. And I would also say that the act of making choices for our collective well-being is interrupting violence. Governance is making choices together at small and large scales, and it's about the things that matter and the things that impact our lives. And so today we are inviting our three speakers into a conversation about these principles that are centered around these core beliefs. Next slide. And these are the core beliefs that we envision a world and that it's possible to operate from a place of mutual self-care, where the well-being, dignity, respect, and agency of the most vulnerable are at the center, where each generation shares the responsibility and care and well-being for the generations that came before them and the generations that came after them, and where all beings are connected, and we are connected and responsible to and with the earth. The principles are organized in three groups. Next slide. The first section is we govern together. And in this section, next slide. The principles of this section speak to our agency and our participation in governance. That participation in governance is a recognition that all of us have inherent value, and that we all have a right to participate. We all have a right to responsibility and accountability to ourselves first and foremost, to one another. We honor the labor and the participation of everyone within our communities. All people have the right and opportunity and the authority to participate, and governance is decentralized. So the decisions that are being made are closer and made with the communities that it impacts. Next slide. The second set of principles are around safety and our sacred responsibility to keep each other safe. Next slide. We keep each other safe. We hold ourselves and each other accountable. Our health and our safety arise from the mutual care that we provide. And a just society, the interruption of violence, and we interrupt violence before it harms others. We end cycles of harm by using care and seeking justice for those who have been harmed. And we make it our responsibility to not sweep harm under the rug, but we mend our past and current wrongs so that the reconciliation between people can create a more harmonious and thriving future. Next slide. And the third set is about thriving together. Like, our goal is not just to destroy the systems that have been harming us and to survive them. We have a bigger, bolder vision that we have been building. We have a bolder commitment to world building that we've been building within the network and with this audience. And as we thrive together, next slide, David, we are thriving together involves sharing our resources in consistent and fair and just ways. It means striving for the well-being of all people, and that's the foundation of a thriving community. People have what they need and they share what they have. So there's adequate and nutritious housing, food, quality of education, reliable healthcare, meaningful work, and time with family and friends, the absence of which we know contributes to the cultural norm of violence that we experience right now. We affirm that the earth sustains us and that we have connection to it, and that the natural world has rights and that we are responsible to uphold those rights. That lands, waters, natural resources are collective. They're part of a collective cultural heritage, and that we steward them. We steward them for all beings that we cohabitate the planet with now and for future generations. And so as we invite people to sign on to We Govern, the spirit of the work is that we're bringing people into the conversation about what is possible to build together. And along with the beautiful, brilliant constellation of human beings who are predominantly Black, Indigenous, people of color, and queer folks who drafted these and offered these principles out into the world. We are asking folks to, when you sign up, that you're just making the most basic agreement, which is to say, yes, I want to be counted among those who believe that these agreements form the foundation of how we should live in the world and how we should live with one another. By signing on to We Govern, you're agreeing that it is our sacred responsibility to take action and to care for our collective well-being. And then from the folks who sign on to this, we begin to build and we begin to support and learn and grow in the ways that our speakers are going to share, and with the ideas that this audience will have about how we move these principles for governance into action in our daily lives. So thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to introduce We Govern to this audience, David and Tori and Prevent Connect. And thank you to all of you for your interest in this series, in the world building invitation that Resonance Network has put out to all of you, for saying yes, and for also saying what next? How do we do it? This conversation today is a conversation about the how, and we're so happy to be here having it with you.
Okay. Well, we are going to have another question for you. And so I believe, Tori, this is another chat that, yes, so there's going to be two questions, or I'm sorry, there's three questions that are going to appear on your screen. So the first one is, which of the We Govern principles align the most with your vision of a world without violence? And it's actually a multiple choice, so you can pick more than one. So we talked about these different principles. So go ahead and number one, which of these principles? Each person sees each other person as a fellow human, being with the same values, rights, and worth. All humans have inherent value. We honor the presence of everyone. Everyone has the right and opportunity and responsibility and authority to participate in governance, and our government is decentralized, made with and in and with the community. The second set of questions is, which of the we keep each other safe principles align most with your for a world without violence? And of course, the third one is, which of the we thrive together principles align? And so go ahead and look at the text chat, go ahead and look at the piece, and I'd like to see everyone to be able to vote. We've got, there's three questions, and just want to talk about which of these principles align with you the most. So great. So let's see. We've got only about a quarter of you have voted. So go ahead and keep on voting. So Alexis, it's really great as we're sharing these, and there's a lot of different principles here, and we're seeing what resonates for this audience and seeing what pieces are going to be able to do it. Go ahead and keep on voting. We've been, oh good. I'm going to wait till I want to get to at least 50% of you before we do it. So we're at 44%. So go ahead and keep on listing which ones of these principles align. I know that some of you are moving forward. We got to 50%. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So Alexis, of the We Govern together principles, the one that had the most resonance was every person sees, each person sees every person as a fellow human being with the same value, rights, and I'm not seeing what the last word is here. So that was the one that was most for the first principle. We keep each other safe principles. The one that had the most resonance was our health and safety arises from a mutual care, a just society, and the interruption of violence before it happens, which is so much, of that primary prevention work that some of us have been doing. And the third one on We Thrive Together, a lot of these were very close, but the one that had the most resonance was people have what they need and share what they have: adequate, nutritious food, housing, quality education, reliable healthcare, meaningful work, and time with friends and family, which, Alexis, that sounded a lot like the vision that we did in the very first poll that we started today with.
It sure did. It was fascinating. Thank you for contributing your input on that. This has been the first time we've actually tested the principles individually, but to see which ones have the most resonance. So that's really fascinating to see. Thanks so much.
Right. You notice we keep on using the word resonance because this is
Corny like that.
We are Wardy Resonance Network. So Alexis, we've got an incredible panel of brilliant guests. So why don't you have a chance to introduce them, and we're going to have each of them tell a story to introduce themselves so you can get a sense of who they are. So I'll hand it to you, Alexis, who will then hand it over to each of our guests.
Yes, I am so grateful just to have the opportunity to sit at the feet of these three brilliant humans who are going to share their transformation journey in relation to these principles with us today. Sarah Curtis is co-executive director of Menace Peacemakers. Mi-Kyung Chung is a facilitator and consultant. Excuse me, and Emmanuel Brown is executive director and steward at the Acorn Center for Restoration and Freedom. I am so happy that they're going to be here, that they'll be here with us for the duration of this call today. And I'm so excited for them to introduce themselves to you in their own ways. So here are our guests.
Bonjour in Dinawe Maganidok, Kiwi Tayashik in the Gonishanabem, Sarah Curtis Indigenous Kajanganashimong, Megizi Nindu Dame. Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon for everyone. If it's not, then good morning. My name is Kiwi Tayashik, and with that name comes no pronouns, or for ease of use in English. My name is Sarah Curtis. I use she, her pronouns, and who I am. So yes, I am the co-executive director of Men as Peacemakers located in Duluth, Minnesota. So shout out to my people from the Soda that I see here. Good to have you all here. But who I am is I come from the people, my people are the people of the Anishinaabe Nation from Lake Superior area specifically. I am proud to say in this call that I reside on my own land, the land of the Anishinaabe Nation today. I come from the people who are musicians and storytellers. I come from the people who are moms. I come from the people who are self-proclaimed weirdos and outsiders, people who don't look like or sound like how you think we should. I come from the people of the long story. I come from the people of the belly laugh. I come from cat mom people. I come from, daughters who have to call their mothers every single day. I come from the people who are so deeply in love with my community that every day when I wake up, I think about I get to think about the people that I love. I come from the people who is blessed to know her ancestors and to be able to talk to them and spend time with them every single day. I also come from the people in the nonprofit realm and the advocates that come and do the work every single day. I come from the people of survivors of all kinds of violence that has happened through generations, too much and too often. And I come from the people who build community around that and build community around other things. I come from the people of aunties and bougie aunties who will make you soup and go get your nails done and have, coming from the people of high femmes and lots of colors and first speakers of the language and people struggling to learn Indigenous languages. I come from urban Indians. I come from relocated Indians. I come from people who still are able to live within their reservation boundaries. I come from the people who like hip hop and traditional music, and sometimes when they mix up, it's just all kinds of good. I come from the people who want to have a conversation. I come from the people who want to know about your mom. Come from the people who bake to show their love and deeply love the Midwest. I come from the people of the ice and snow who love cold more than anything and melt after 70 degrees. And I come from the people who feel very honored to be able to sit here and to join you in story today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We are so glad that you are here, and I feel your people with you. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I feel honored to be a part of one of your people, and you are one of my people. My name is Mi-Kyung Chung. My pronouns are she and they. And that little photo is a drawing of me done by my little nibbling, Young Chung. She drew it when she was 5. I am zooming in from Olympia, Washington, land of the Nisqually and Coast Salish. But my residence is in Los Angeles, home of the Tonga and the Chumash. And it's not every day that people ask you to be invited into a conversation on dreaming and imagining what building a future or building the conditions without violence would look like. And I remember Alexis had shared, in your introduction, show up as your whole self. Show up as your whole self. And, I think for me, when I come into community with so many of you all who are doing this work all across the country and caring for so many of your loved ones during this time of global pandemic, I think of all the journeys we've all been on. And, I think of this aspect of wholeness, and wholeness has been a journey for me. So I enter this conversation as a queer Korean whose parents came from the south of the wetlands in Suncheon and from the little islands of Udo. They were farmers, they were workers. I still have family there. I think of my mountain relatives, many of which have shown me and taught me ways in which I can connect back into my body and be with myself and to be with others as we think about futures without violence. And so I'm really grateful to be here in this conversation with you all. As I share, I know that there's like 314 people joining with us right now, and many more who are having these conversations, but I hope to have these conversations more and more with each other, with my loved ones. And I think about, before I hand it over to Emmanuel, I just want to take some time to honor all those who have transitioned during the global pandemic and who are transitioning now, all our teachers and our ancestors who made it possible for us to be here, named and unnamed. And I know that, all the ways in which you say your prayers or hold space, I just wanted to spend a couple of seconds just to remember them. Thank you.
Thank you for honoring our ancestors and our descendants. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emmanuel H. Brown, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm so happy to be here with you all today, to be in this sharing of practice and story, which has become kind of a theme for my life. So I'm so grateful. I am the great-grandchild of Elizabeth Brown and Mamen. I am the grandchild of Cecil Phillips and Clarence Brown, the child of ascended ancestors, Ascension Highlander and Clarence Emmanuel. My blood flows from St. Lucia and Grenada, the Bahamas, Virginia, and New York. I have been shaped by the Caribbean Sea, the foothills of Oakland, California, red dirt, and stardust. My people are Black freedom seekers, queer and trans rule definers, practitioner revolutionaries, artists transformationists, and radical conjurers. We are people who lead with our hearts, who conjure with our minds and nature and spirit, who bring from the immaterial to the material. I believe the world we want is possible, and my legacy is building the roads we can all take to freedom. I'm so grateful to share with you from my altar of learning, from Acorn Center for Restoration of Freedom, which is my home and my legacy work. I'm so much more to share. Thank you all for having me in this space.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you for being here.
Here. I'm gonna, sorry. Great. So I think we're now gonna, Alexis, get a chance. We've got a chance to get to meet each, hear the stories about meeting, but we want to hear some more details from each on how we govern and the lessons from each of them. So we're going to start with Sarah Curtis. So Sarah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Bonjour again, everyone. David, is it possible to spotlight my face right now, then go back to the... It feels strange to talk to you all with staring at my headshot, which, while it is better than my previous headshot, still feels a little strange. Bonjour. And so I'm going to be talking about, or the principle that I was tasked to talk story about was the We Govern Together. And when I thought about this and was asked, the one thing that came in alignment with me is the gathering of women that I sing with in my tribal community. So first of all, to give you place. So again, land of ice and snow. I have about 6 inches of snow in my yard. Everything is quiet. We are experiencing a heat wave at almost 40 degrees today. And the calmness of the snow is around and is everywhere. I come from what is considered a large town of 12,000 people. This is the town that people actually travel to do their shopping, to come into this place. It is a border town of the tribal community Nagachiwanong that I live right off of, the place in the river where the water eddies. And in this place, I've spent my whole life here. Both sides of my family come here, and spending my whole life here, this place is in my bones. The water and the rocks and the trees are in my bones. My ancestors are from here on both sides of my family. This is where we are from, very next to Gitchigome, or Lake Superior, the big lake that holds us. And I want to start my story in a place where I used to be called Sarah, please don't be mad at me, Curtis. Sarah, please don't raise your voice near me, Curtis. Sarah, I will fix everything so everybody feels okay, Curtis. And in that space and in that place, my voice was buried. and my voice was secondary, and my voice was not important to me, and I felt not important to anyone else around me. And I also come from tribal people, and I also come from tribal people who are very affected by the United States policy. My mother was born in southern Santa Ana, California, right, as a Anishinaabe woman through the relocation policy, and affected my family with foster care, with relocation, with displacement, with unenrollment, with all of the other kinds of things that happen. And growing up, it was never talked about, our history, our culture, and who we were. I used to be very angry at my mother for that, for keeping that from me, and finding it very strange, right? Is that we were living in a community right off the boundaries, literally 1 mile from the tribal community. But she never shared any of that with us, and that we were raised, I mean, she was always an Indian mama. Everyone was welcome in our home. She could feed 97 people with a pound of hamburger, egg noodles, and cream of mushroom soup. I have no idea how that happened, right? But there was always something missing inside of me. And I had the ability, being one of the first people in my family to ever go to college, but the big colleges was too much. So I started out at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, your path to knowledge, right? I was very excited about that situation. It took me 40 minutes the first day to get out of my car and to walk into the building because I didn't know what college was, right? Even though it was in this town of 12,000 people that I've spent my entire life in. And as I went into that tribal college space, I found my people and my culture. I learned the first word in my language. I learned how to say buju, which is hello. I learned that there were all kinds of different Indians and Indians like me. People who got to grow up very traditionally and learn these things, and then people like me who was punk rock. I don't know, who am I? Trying to figure this out, realizing and coming into my spaces that, you know, I belonged somewhere. These were my people, and those dreams that I had when I was a little girl and I was scared and harm was happening to me, and Indians would come forward, and in my mind, like they were totally like spaghetti Western Indians, right? Like it didn't come, but the ancestors came through the way that they did, and I felt an alignment inside of me and something that I'd never felt before, my grounding from my ancestors. And so I started to just voraciously learn everything that I could learn and go into all of these spaces and cook things and be able to sit at people's table. And one opportunity I had was to go to a conference called the Anishinaabe Moanteg Conference. And in that space, for the first time in my life, I saw a woman singer, Anishinaabe woman singer with a hand drum. And I was shook. Like I felt, when she sang, I felt things unlock in my throat. I felt things unlock in my chest. I felt things unlock that had been buried so deeply for so long. And I used the last little bit of my per diem money, because I was a college student working like 3 jobs to pay rent and eat at the same time. But I used the end of that per diem money and I bought the CD she had. And the poor woman that traveled with me drove back from Sault Ste. Marie back to Cloquet, Minnesota. I listened to it nonstop. It lit a fire in me. I needed more of it. And then one day, as I learned all these songs and I would sing them to myself, and I would hear these things, you know, people saying to me, we come from a long line of women who can't sing. You sound like a moose in labor, like those kinds of things that, you know, come forward. But there was something inside of me that had this fire. And I was setting up for an event at the college I was going to and playing my CD. And this woman came in the room and she said, "Hey, where did you get a recording of that song? I've been looking for it everywhere." I was like, "Oh, I could burn a CD for you, because you see, I didn't think that I was Indian enough to like sing it with her, right? Like I was just learning. She was like this person. Her name is now a dear friend, is Nata Nakamoque, which is the woman who knows how to sing, right? And I was like, dang. And so she's talking to me and she's like, so do you sing? And I was like, in my car, in the shower, like with my dog. And she goes, I think you sing. So I'm starting to meet at the college every Wednesday night. You should come. And I was like, absolutely. I'll be there. And every day for 6 months, every week she texted and let me know, until one day I worked up the courage. And coming into that space and sitting with a group of, ragtag res girls, sitting all together trying to figure out how to sing, our drum beats not lining up, Liz patiently teaching us, learning our language, people having that different kind of experience. And I remember being so afraid that first time when she said, she sat down and she's like, oh, we're going to sing the Strong Woman song. Sarah, you know that song, you take second lead. And I was like, right? I'm not good enough, right? What I am is I'm not as experienced as this person or that person are coming into the space, but I did it, right? And it was pitiful. It was like, right? Really crying for the people. And so when I came out and I was walking back to my car, another woman in the group said, hey, you have a really great voice. And I was like, me, right? And that started this path of us building together in our community. Women hadn't gathered to sing for a really long time out of ceremony. And so we started, laughing. We started teaching each other things. We started practicing. We started watching each other's kids. We started teaching our kids how to sing. We started normalizing these things. And then Liz's mom, Bunny, got us a gig to sing for the Res's child abuse prevention walk in front of the community at the pancake breakfast, right? And so here we were, like we go up and we sing, and it was rough. It was rugged. We were freaking out, but people started crying. Other women started crying, and it was not because we were so gifted and so talented in what we were doing. They started crying because something else felt right with them. Something else hit their spirit. Something else strummed the chord of that blood memory. And as we built this sisterhood, we realized that our stories were so much the same. And we realized that we really needed each other. We needed each other to be able to be a group together. Some people knew how to sing really technically and really well. Some people could make anyone feel comfortable coming into that community group. Some people really knew how to sew and could help us come together, and that we valued and realized that there was no one leader in our group, right? That we had to step forward when our gifts were called forward. And that we moved in and out of this stepping up in a way that made us all seen and made us all feel connected together, even in our strength and our activism. And really remembering that what we were doing is a benefit of our ancestors and our descendants. That we had no memory of women singing, but our ancestors did, and now our descendants know. And so we had an opportunity. We released our third album last December. And we had some recordings from an anthropologist named Frances Dinsmore, who came to the Anishinaabe Nation in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And with these little wax recordings that were digital recordings, and we'd listen to it, and it was so beautiful, knowing that our ancestors, even though the conditions to sing in front of a white anthropologist must have felt really icky and exploitative, right? But they loved us enough to put those recordings. And so we were able to piece these together and to listen and to get the words and to re-record them onto a new album. And looking at the impact of colonization on us, that Indian women are often seen as like quiet or maybe subservient, not loud, not into activism. Or into activism in a way that is more subdued and quiet. And we found that there was this one song, and the story that went with this song in the book said, there is a woman who came from the Lac du Flambeau community in northern Wisconsin of Anishinaabe people, and her village was attacked, and her husband, the leader of that village, was harmed. And in that, the villagers escaped across the lake to go, and they looked for her and couldn't find her. And they turned back and they saw her single-handedly fighting off everyone to protect the people of the village. So much so that the story says when the people tried chasing her, she ripped their canoes apart with her bare hands, right? And came into and brought it back to everyone, brought back the war prizes, brought back the song. And the song literally went, if I may indulge, goes, anyway, when gije waso win, gije waso minde muyewe, ja waso nunda konanya, hey, hoya, hey, oya, ha, hey, though, which means that the old woman loved her people so much that she took care of them. So not only was she a badass, but she was a grandma, right? And so taking that memory of remembering that our voices are important, but it needs to be all of our voices, and all of our voices don't just mean the people who are living right now, and that we carry forward through our descendants, through our ancestors, and collectively together. Because if we don't have all of us, we can't move. We need all of us to move. And nobody is less than. Everybody is important. Miigwech Bisntawig.
So beautiful. Thank you, Sarah.
So let's go hear from our audience and pose a question to you. What am I learning from the warrior grandmothers in my life? I love the concept that Sarah introduced. So we'd love to hear from you. What are you learning from the warrior grandmothers in your life? And so go ahead and write that into the text chat. We'd love to be able to see what emerges for the audience. That we have so much that we can be able to do. Knitting blankets for strangers. A different world is possible. Unconditional love. Be fearless. Take care of others. Being the feeling, making sure all of us are together to govern together. Adaptability, resilience, and the art of checking on your people. I have a voice. My voice is important. I'm a healer, keeping us fed. Food is love. Food is love. Believe in magic. Healing food. Choosing joy is courageous. Perseverance. Grow food. I'm noticing some themes, Alexis and Sarah. Speak up. All of our gifts are needed. Family isn't limited by blood. Have the backs of those you love. Being unique and unapologetic. Family is what you make it. You want to see these lessons from our warrior grandmothers: strength, connection, we are treasures, investing in our youth and elders. Enjoy being pretty, but know that kindness makes you beautiful. Keep a song in your heart and eat strawberries.
The story is unfinished and I have a role in it.
So I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. I have a responsibility to share their stories.
Legacy is important, and knowing who we are will guide it.
Even a brush stroke is breath. Meditation, sharing with community.
Fighting for what you believe in is hard, but has its reward. Tenderness is a root so deep and wild and alive in us and in everything around us.
Thank you all for sharing these brilliant lessons we're learning from our warrior grandmothers. Why don't I'm aware of the time and we want to make sure to hear from all. So let's move to hear the next voice and story. And let me know when to advance slides, please.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me?
I'm going to stop the share and let people see you. And
Thank you so much.
good.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm swimming in the memories of my own grandmothers, and I know that they will definitely be something that I share. You know, the invitation was to talk about the second bucket of we govern under, we keep each other safe. And, you know, safety is such a loaded term, right? There's so many ways in which safety has become only synonymous with services, right? Something that we outsource. And I was like thinking about all the principles, and I was thinking about my own journey of healing. And you know, I saw the polling, right? And I know that the most popular thing was just really about the ways in which we care for each other, right? People are calling it mutual aid, but really all of us in all our histories, our ancestors have made ways out of no ways, right? In the most seemingly insurmountable obstacles. And then I looked at the third one under the principle, right? And I think I don't know if you could pull it up, but the third one was we end cycles of harm and violence by using care in seeking justice with those who have been harmed. And I think where I'm going to enter the conversation is really around adding and causing harm, not just around the harm that I may experience, but the harm that I may do to another. What is my impact on people? As I come from generations and cycles of my own historical trauma and family violence, and my peoples in the Korean Peninsula, it was something that I had to really grapple with. Like, why was I the way I was? And I think the first people who taught me that actually were my grandparents, Ok Ran Lee and Ok Shin Kim. And through my deep relationship with them, I really came to understand this lesson of punishment and unconditional love. And so, you know, we can enter at this from so many ways. Many of folks here run shelters, work with survivors of violence, and work with various systems. And I think for me, I was, you know, my maternal grandfather, Ok Shin Kim, he passed away when he was 77. But he raised me. He raised me and my two brothers with my grandmother, and that was because both my parents worked. And he showed me such care. We watched wrestling together on Saturdays, screaming with joy as we saw. Yeah, it's pretty violent, but it was hilarious. Or he turned me on to the Three Stooges. He was a big Three Stooges fan. I don't think he really understood Three Stooges, but that brought him a lot of joy. And he was always playing games with us, a Korean game called Hatto with my grandmother. And all I knew from him was that, you know, that aspect of joy, spending time on Saturdays and eating together. But he never shared his story. He never shared his story. And for me, there was something there. I was like, something's there, because, you know, he would stare far off, you know, sometimes while watching TV and gaze off. And I knew that he had a difficult relationship with my mother and all his children. And I remember getting him a notebook. I went to the local drugstore and got a little notebook with a pen. And I was like, hey, this is for you, you know, like, so that you can like write your stories and, you know, just have a journal entry. And it was really more my need, right? I wanted to know, but I had asked him for this. And, you know, of course it was never filled out, but I remember then, you know, that, you know, how could someone that only showed me so much love, and as I would later find out, had enacted so much violence onto his children. And that was something that I had to really sit with, because it impacted how I was raised and how my brothers were raised. And I think one of the ways in which, when I then began this journey of, you know, what are the things that are about my own healing, I had to really think about, um, what is my impact on people? How do others impact me, experience me? And I always imagine this alien planet, if we had different conditions. Maybe it's because we have these eyes that are the way they are, we can't see ourselves. But I always imagine, like, oh, if we had these eyes that jutted out of our heads and could see ourselves, would we see ourselves better? Would we feel our impact more if we had eyes like that? And then I I would think, actually, that's why we need each other. We need each other, even though biologically our eyes are the way we are. We know each other and experience each other with our community and connection to each other, our love for each other, and how we may drop off food, if you're not feeling well, if you're feeling sad, and even if you feel your friend doesn't want to talk about it, texting them and being like, wait a second, I feel you differently today. Do you need to talk? I'm always here. And so when I think about the transformation of my own healing work around being disassociated and not feeling, and then being brought back into my body, I really think about that journey of exploration back into my grandmother and my grandfather's histories. And I did get a chance to return to Korea. I'm very thankful to have that relationship still there with the peoples in the wetlands in Suncheon and the islands of Udo. And, having that relationship and just walking in the mountains with my family, I hadn't known the history of how there was a communist repression down in Suncheon in the 30s, and my grandmother gathering all her children and knowing that if she doesn't gather them now, they're going to kill every male child. And she would there's a mountain in South Korea called Chidi Mountain. And they're not as high as the Himalayas or even as high as some of the mountains in California, but they were the mountains that were in her neighborhood. And they were pretty high. The range was large. And she gathered all her children and took what she could, and she just went into the mountains and traveled for days. She was pregnant. She was pregnant with my younger aunt, and she would just march into the next city, and that's what saved them. And that's what saved. I feel like that's what we're doing every day. And when I think about that safety, it's not some huge system or some fancy way of doing things or some polished out program, but it's really making the choices that people have been making all the time, whether we call it mutual aid or collective care. And so yeah, I mean, I when I think about this principle, it's how do I practice that in my own life through the work that I do around my own neighborhoods, the people that live around me, the food care system that we developed, or the ways in which we, would take care of the elders down the street, or the ways in which we figured out ways in which to support other siblings in other cities. And so we're doing that all the time. And I think we forget that when we say safety, we think, oh, it's outside of us, but it's everybody who's here. I hope it's touching all the ways in which you're already doing that. You're already doing that. You're already doing that for the ones that you love, and thinking about how to seed those things. So I really think about that drumbeat that Sarah talked about. And for me, the mountains are that drumbeat, and it always returns me back to those ways that I thought I did not know. But as I keep walking into one mountain or the other and feeling the rhythm of my pace, the wind on my body, noticing that there's a bird there that wasn't there before, or an owl that I knew was in another location is now graced us with their presence now. Like the ways in which I tune into mountains help me remember all those ways in which we can really become rooted in what we already do, and then thinking about how we share that in creative and imaginative ways with each other. And so um, uh, I sit here today on that journey, you know, and deeply grateful for many of the teachers who have brought that along, my own journey, and taught me. And I have my own timer on, so I don't keep going and going. But when I think about the question, we had posed something around, you know, what are the ways in which you return to safety? And I think, David, I would invite the question of the audience to reflect on, like, what are your own ways that you have practiced collective care and connectedness?
I was on mute, so no one could hear what I was saying. So I'm going to share the screen, and oh, I have to remove the spotlight. And the computer is being finicky on me, so let me go restart. There. So I'm going to move to what do I need to return to experience more safety, or what type of connections people need to make? We'd love to hear from the audience here and be able to share what do you need to return to more safety and connection. And I think that's here. And so love to have people move forward and go ahead, and what do you need to return to safety? So I turn to arts, singing, knitting scarves, during conference calls for others, writing in a women's circle, overthrow capitalism, compassionate honesty, listening, learning, nonviolent communication practice group in our daily life, trusting my chosen family to support me, empathy, beadwork, safe housing, be safe, music, cooking for myself and others, art making, honesty and boundaries, storytelling spaces, sleep, yes, empathy, being deeply connected to a village, either my people who make up my metaphorical village or the people who live close to me, checking in with my family and loved ones, feeding others, art, music, ceramics, beading, make music, snuggle my dog, storytelling, empathy, going slow, knowing my neighbors, self-care, quilting with a group of other women, prayer. Daily practices allow me to be and offer peace. Understanding that when I cause harm to others, I also cause harm to myself. It means tending to the harm I cause myself with love and compassion, so I can show up with meaningful repair to those who I have harmed. A nice cup of tea and self-care. Taking the time to be in my body and aware of my surroundings, nature, my position on earth. Knowing that everyone is being educated on empathy to others. Walks.
David, someone said, oof, thinking of how differently I would have answered this question before the pandemic and now. It's just, you know, the connecting, just we govern to this time. Like this time has brought us into acute awareness of our responsibility to take care of ourselves, because systems that were never designed to support many of us, most of us, are failing us. And so, yeah, this has given us a time. This time has given us an opportunity to practice and to be up close and intimate with these questions.
Well, let's move on to our third to hear from Emmanuel, because we want to be able to get chance for the story. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and share the screen and spotlight for everyone, Emmanuel.
Hey everyone. I'm so grateful to the two storytellers that have come before me. It's such good medicine. And so I invite you that if for any other conference that you go back and listen again, this might be the one, because there are so many good nuggets in there. And so I'm so happy to be sharing with you all about the We Thrive section, right? And as so it happens, you all talk really a lot about that moment of like, everybody has what they need, right? And so for me, you know, and I'm a practitioner, so I don't say anything that I haven't done, tried, experimented probably 3,000 times. And I'm a very mad scientist where I try stuff with myself before it ever comes out my mouth to anyone else. So for me, the practice that allows us to really understand this moment of how does everybody have what they need is the practice of interdependence, right? And at its core, for me, you know, my definition of interdependence really is about recognizing my wholeness, freedom, and well-being, and yours are tied together, right? So recognizing that my wholeness, freedom, and well-being and yours are actually tied together. And that for me means a couple of different things, right? So interdependence is not codependence. For anybody who is codependently phobic and who like runs from the hills and is like, I don't want to depend, I'm gonna lose myself in someone. Settle your system right now. Interdependence actually requires our autonomy, right? I live on 8 acres of land, and on my land, I have a river and a pond, right? And so I get to sit with that, and it's taught me, right, about what autonomy actually means, right? So I'll give the example of the creek that I have and the rocks that live inside of that creek, right? So the creek, the water itself, right, is its own entity. The rock is its own entity, but they rely on each other, right? The river needs the minerals that the rock has. The rock, in order to release the minerals, needs the creek's movement, right? So when we think about interdependence, that's the way that we can think about it, right? Like we are still in ourselves, in our bodies, in our own boundaries, but we are reliant upon each other, right? So when we think about how are we practicing interdependence in our everyday lives, for me, you know, that is a mind, body, spirit practice, right? It's a practice that I have with the land that I live on. It's a practice that I have with everybody who comes to the land, every creature that is here, right? Where I automatically started to think differently when I started to be in this more global practice of interdependence. I don't think we can get to the place of sharing with everyone from policy, right? It hasn't worked. Like we try it again, we try it again, right? Like, because there's something missing. And for me, it's the soul of the thing, right? The intention behind the policy. Are we going into the policy with the intention that I am connected, right, with that person who might be houseless? Are we going into the policy with the intention that the person who, you know, runs my groceries through at the grocery store, I'm connected to that person, whether they live in my community or not, right? And so for me, you know, thinking about that and being inside of a practice of interdependence, sharing came quite naturally, right? Like it was something that emerged from the practice. Right? So I think differently. So when I was starting a nonprofit organization, right, and starting this work and vision life work that I have, I was always thinking about sharing, right? If I am getting paid, you know, $1,000, how can I make sure that somebody else in my community is getting 100 of those dollars, right? And that's the other thing about interdependence, right? It's also not sacrificing yourself, right? That's the other side that people go to, where it's like, I have to give everything away to everyone all the time. And now I'm interdependent. Interdependence does not require your self-sacrifice, right? It requires a grounded level of offering. What can you offer from your overflow? What can you offer from your abundance, right? So that then somebody else's abundance could be fed into, and so forth and so on. And so when the other part of interdependence, when I think about, is when we think about interdependence, we come into this new way of being, right? So we're now doing practices that are actually having us really enact this worldview that resonance has been inviting us in. And then we start to build new structures, right? We start to build new structures that allow us to consider broadening our definition of the we, right? We thrive. Who is your we, right? Your we could be your most intimate connections, your neighbors, your family. It could be your movement community. But can your we be the person at the Dollar General who checks you out? Can your we be the people, you know, I have a lot of people who come to my land to provide services. They become a part of my we, right? And so when we start thinking about expanding our we, right, then we start to see this way that we work and new structures emerge, right? So one of the new structures for me has been Acorn, right? This physical place. So I've been running programs for a long time, and my ancestors gifted me with this place, right? They were like, listen, you need the land, you need to ground, you're an Aquarius, here's 8 acres. This needs to be generational, 30 years into the future, go. And so I've been here for a little over a year, right? And one of the things that came out of being here, came out of the practices with my community, is this thing we call relational economy. And essentially, it's this idea. It's a practice in which we reclaim our relationships as the foundation of all exchange. So we are actively reclaiming our relationships as the foundation of all exchange. So that says any exchange we have happens in relationship and impacts our relationship. So, right, what does that look like, right? So I'm going to give you some quick examples of how we do and activate relational economy here. The first example is really thinking about the way we have people come and partake in the medicine of the land. So we host restorative retreats here. And what was important for me from the moment I was gifted this land by my ancestors was to say, I don't own the land. The land owns itself, right? So my first ritual in the process of buying this land was to break any relationship of ownership that any human who has ever occupied this land has had, right? And so for me, if I don't own the land, then the land becomes a part of who decides who gets to come to this space. So we don't have just a general way for you to like click on a button and book a retreat, right? We have a request process. And in that process, I engage the land, the ancestors of this land and the land itself in saying, who should come? And let me tell you right now that a lot of times I'm like, yes, this person and this person, and the land makes all kinds of decisions for me based off of who actually gets to be here. From everything from, you know, people who come and they have amazing experiences to people who were never planned to come and they end up here in 3 days, right? And because I engage the land in the process of saying, what medicine do you want to share and who do you want to share that medicine with? It really creates a couple of things. One, we have an open resource exchange policy, right? So I don't have a set price for coming and being with this land. And that feels really important because it really does remove the capitalist notion that you could somehow pay enough money to get the medicine that this land has to provide for you. There is no dollar amount, right, that could cover the medicine that people receive when they come here. And I'm clear about that, right? Like, I am unabashedly clear about that, right? It also says your ability to provide financial resources does not dictate your ability to access restoration, right? And those structures emerging, and it's working, right? So for a year, we had our first season during a pandemic. Let me just be clear about the context. We had our first season as a retreat center, a place for people to travel to during a pandemic. We had 10 retreats here, and we were well-resourced, from everything from financial resources that people contributed to herbs, to fabrics, to just energy being on the land. And so for me, I know that that all came from my practice of interdependence, right? The hard, grueling practice to be able to get to the structures, the new structures and ways of being. I could talk about so many other ways, but I want to make sure we have time for general conversation and you all to be able to be in conversation with us. And I thank you all for listening. And again, like I said, like, come and listen to these stories again and see how they land inside of your body, because that will be the first information that you need for what you can do to join us in this path in We Govern. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a powerful piece. Let's go back to our audience, and we're running out of time, I know, so there's too many pieces, but we'd love to just have people think about I'd love to hear from the audience. What's one action you can take today to build a world without violence? Emmanuel, there is the question, what's the name of Acorn Center for Yeah, it's conveniently right behind you, but if you can write that into the chat, Emmanuel, that would be great, because I saw that request come in. We'd love to hear. I mean, this has been inspiring. We'd love to hear what action are you being inspired to think about. So I see that they're starting to come. Practice the rigor of aligning my actions and choices with values. Vote. Forgiveness is moving forward. Wear a mask in a very red state. Remember to breathe and pause. Question my intentions. Hold space for people in loving connection with self and with each other. Defining my ideas of self-governance. Respect the land. Getting clear on and naming my own boundaries, communicating them so others can know best be there for me, and I can realize how to show up for myself first so I can show up for others. Think about my ancestral wisdom. Empathy and listening. Wear your mask regardless of the color of your state. Think about where I have abundance I can share. Purchasing power, buy local, support women-owned, BIPOC and LGBTQ businesses. Always be a kind-hearted human being. Releasing the genuine me. I'd love to hear from any of our speakers and panelists, just reflections on this. We only have a few more minutes left, and we want to be able to get a chance, as our audience is sharing their ideas, we'd love to hear the insights from each of you as we get to our last few minutes. And feel free to unmute. I'm going to let it emerge from each of you. Emmanuel.
You know, as I'm sitting here and talking to folks, and it's so beautiful that Resonance has put together these principles, it's also been a set of things that in the languaging of it, I've been really thinking about, how do I bring this to my birth family, my sister, my nieces, and I encourage you to take these principles into the places where you don't normally take things like this, right? Like, I have a critical mass view around this new world order that we're trying to bring to light. And I'm like, we need more people than the people who might be the folks you see every day from, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so get brave, right? It's not easy. I can tell you that for sure. It's not easy bringing this into spaces. And for me, it was like bringing it into my Black family spaces, my birth family spaces in particular, to be like, I need to start bridging this gap. And these principles have really allowed me to do that. So think about one place, one person who you don't normally have these types of conversations with, that you can bring one of these principles, share the website with them and say, I wanna have a virtual tea and chat with you, right, about this. Because this is something that matters to me, right? This is something that I'm actually trying to bring about. And I want you to be with me inside of that. Yeah.
Okay, we are in our last minute. And so, Sarah, please.
So one thing that I wanted to say is that, in this place of time, look at yourself in the doing and the how we be with each other, right? And the how we be. Because as a dear friend of mine said to me, something that has really resonated is, what are we going to do when our analysis is useless? Right? Our analysis is useless. And how are we in right relation to each other? And we're building that relationship. We're building that fabric with such a tight weave that it can withstand bouncing. Right? And when he said that to me, it has stuck as this visual picture. And so my invitation to you all, as we think about this, is how are we in right relation, and how are we weaving our fabric tight enough, because there will be bouncing. So how are we weaving that together in a way that goes beyond just our analysis of social justice? So language.
Young.
Sarah, I love that. I keep thinking of a spider web and just all of that bouncing back and forth. And I think Miriam Kaba, who is someone I learn a lot from, has been saying, do multiple experiments, try, be brave, even if you fail. And so I think that's my invitation, the invitation that I tell myself around that it's not that anybody else is going to do it for us, that we can and have been and are doing it. And how can we play and be creative with those around us, just even my one friend, on the ways in which we can enact all those beautiful principles that were shared in the beginning by Alexis around our ways of being and doing this with each other. So yes, dream and build and experiment and fail.
Great. And Alexis, why don't you come close us out with We Govern?
What a great way to end this series. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, Sarah, Meek Young, for what you shared, but also just for your life and for your courage to be transforming out loud, to be inviting us into that process, to share your ancestors with us, to call your descendants into this moment with us. Thank you for being in practice and being in reflection and being in community with me personally, with this network, with this audience that we have co-created this space with. Thank you to David and Tori. And we just invite all of you, if there's anything that resonated, even if you can't put it into an immediate action step today, if there's anything that resonated with you in the We Govern principles, we invite you to visit we-govern.org. We invite you to sign up, because once you sign up, you have counted yourself among the folks who say, yep, this is the way that I think we need to be together. And I want to hear more about how to practice this. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to design ways to bring this world into being alongside other folks who have counted themselves among that. We have a sacred responsibility for our collective well-being, and our interdependence requires our autonomy. Thank you for that, Emmanuel. Thank you for your time. Thank you for going along with us on this journey for this 5-part series. We look forward to what we can continue to build together as we take responsibility for our governance and don't hand that responsibility over to a new administration, no matter what kind of team they may be building. The responsibility for governance lives within all of us. We make the decisions about our lives. We can make the decisions about what impacts us. And we do that by stepping up and by saying yes and by committing that we don't do this just for ourselves. We do it for ourselves. We do it for the earth. We do it for our descendants. And we do it to honor the ancestors who have come before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. This concludes this web conference, and thank you. And please follow Prevent, Connect, and Resonance Network.